Welcome back to my channel. Happy New Year. It's 2023. So far, it feels great. I'm so happy that 2022 is over. Let's just say she was a tough one. Today we're talking about the books that I read in 2022 and that I enjoyed. And it seems to be a joke in the booktube community that everyone has picked 7 favorite books for 2022, and I am no exception. I picked 7 books that I enjoyed reading last year. First of all, because I didn't read that much, to be honest. I believe I read 24 or 25 books. But also, I didn't have a great reading year, so there were not too many books that I thoroughly enjoyed and made a lasting impression on me. But some of them did, and these are the ones that I'm going to talk about today. So let's get right into it. So I have 5 out of the 7 books here because 2 of them are actually audiobooks. These are no order, so I will just go through them. Let's start with If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which I read. This was the first book that I read last year. And it was the first book that I read, and it was a 5-star book. And I thought, wow, this is a great way to kick off my reading year. Little did I know it would be the year of the reading slump. You probably heard about this before. It's a dark academia novel, which is often compared to Donna Tartt's The Secret History, which I don't like, by the way. But I really love this one. The story takes place at a university and focuses on a friend group that studies acting, specifically Shakespeare. And of course, there's a tragic accident and we have to find out what happened. This is, of course, the classic dark academia trope. And this is not a spoiler because in the beginning you learn that there was something horrible that took place and that the story is now, in retrospective, going to tell you what actually happened. I think I connected to this book because first and foremost, I'm a Shakespeare nerd. I am. And I really loved how the author used Shakespeare plays that the characters were acting out in the story in order to move the story along. So there was this kind of mirror effect between the Shakespeare plays and the story itself. And the author also incorporates actual quotes from Shakespeare plays. So you have the normal text and then some sentences end, for example, in a line from Macbeth. And I really enjoyed this. I would say you don't have to be a Shakespeare fan in order to like this book or even be familiar with Shakespeare's plays. You can just simply read it as it is. And maybe this will get you into reading Shakespeare, who knows. But I highly recommend this one. The ending of this book broke my heart so badly. I couldn't stop crying. I was full on bawling my eyes out when I finished reading this book. It's so sad, and yeah, highly recommend if you're in for a good cry, if you are looking to be invested in a friend group, in relationships between characters, and yeah, maybe have your heart broken a little bit. Also, this gets extra points for including queer storylines and queer relationships. Speaking of queer relationships, next up, My Policeman by Bethan Roberts. This has a lovely cover showing the Brighton Pier and some people swimming in the ocean. I read this in summer and this really is a perfect summer read, I would say. Again, this book broke my heart, which seems to be a common theme in this selection that I made. And of course, as you probably know, this has been turned into a film recently, starring Emma Corrin and of course, I was about to say our Lord and Savior, Harry Styles. I haven't seen the film yet and I'm kind of hesitant to watch it because this book really meant a lot to me, so maybe I will refrain from watching the film, especially because I heard it's not that good. So My Policeman is a story about a love triangle between Marion, Tom and Patrick. Marion is a teacher and she's married to Tom, who's a policeman. They're both really young, and at some point Tom meets Patrick, who works at a museum, and opens up this world of art and culture to him, and eventually Tom and Patrick fall in love with each other. And the story then is being told from each character's perspective. So you have a chapter that is being told from Marion's perspective, and then you have a chapter that is being told from Tom's perspective. I really enjoy this kind of narration where each chapter is a different perspective and a different character. And I think that is what led to connecting to these characters so well and so intensely, at least for me. I would say this is a very unhappy book. There's not a lot of joy in this. It's all rather tragic. There are no winners in the story. Every single character goes through so much pain. I don't know, for me this was a very enjoyable read, but at the same time it really got me down at certain points. So yeah, just a little bit of a warning, not warning, but a disclaimer, I would say, about this book. But otherwise, I think this is highly underrated. I feel like not a lot of people read this book, but I think it's underrated and I would recommend this highly to everyone. The next book is also a book I would recommend to everyone. I think this should be mandatory reading. It's Just Kids by Patti Smith. I know I'm very late to the party, and I know that this book has been around for years and everyone has been raving about it for years, and it took me quite some time to actually read it. I had it on my bookshelf for, I don't know, maybe over a year before I picked it up, but I was happy that I picked it up. This is a book that will stay with me forever. I feel like this really influenced me in such a deep way. It changed my perspective. I don't know, I gained so much from it. Not only more insight into Patti Smith's life, but also just the way that she talks about her relationships, especially her relationship with Robert, is just so special and universal and translatable onto each and everyone's life, I would say. Just Kids, an autobiographical account of Patti Smith and her early time in New York, and of course her relationship with Robert Mapplethorpe at that time, but also her relationships with everyone that she met, and her time where she stayed at the famous Chelsea Hotel, and the art that she created, and how she was a poet and then became a musician. And yeah, just a great account of her life and her early days in New York City. If you're into that era, if you're into that crowd of these people in New York that were creating art and, you know, sort of living together and all influenced each other, I would highly recommend this. But as I said before, also just in general, if you want to read about a relationship, about coming of age, growing up, being different, seeking safety in art and expressing yourself, this is the book for you. Funnily enough, another book on this list by a famous musician telling his own story is The Storyteller by Dave Grohl. I listened to this book as an audiobook, which was the perfect choice because listening to Dave Grohl telling you about his life is just a really great experience. I was a Nirvana girly when I was younger, and then I became a Foo Fighters girl, and I'm still a Foo Fighters girl. and I'm very much a Dave Grohl girl. So this was a very special book for me because I have been sort of spending a lot of time already with his music, and also, I don't know, I watched all the Foo Fighters documentaries and stuff, so I've always been a huge fan of Dave Grohl. This book was very special, and there are a lot of musicians' autobiographies out there, but I feel like this one was kind of different. It was calm, it was reflective. I felt like it was almost a sort of meditation, I would say. He touches upon how he got started in music. He talks a lot about his relationship with his mother and how far she and her love for music influenced him. Of course, he also talks a lot about Nirvana. He talks about Kurt Cobain's death and in how far that affected him for the rest of his life. And then also you get these great stories about, of course, how he met other musicians like Paul McCartney and they became friends. And he also talks a lot about his own family, so about his daughters and in how far they are starting to play music. And it's a lovely read, I would say, and especially if you're interested in Dave Grohl or the Foo Fighters or music in general, I would say this is a great book. I feel like this is a book for the fans, but also this is a book that you can read or listen to if you've never heard of, or maybe you heard of them, but like if you never were a Foo Fighters fan or a Nirvana fan or whatever. I also really enjoyed that there was a playlist based on the book and all the music he talks about, and it was just, you know, he talks about these punk bands from Seattle in the early 90s, which I had never heard of. But then you listen to it and you really, you know, it sets the atmosphere for this entire book and all the stories that he's telling, and I really enjoyed that as well. Now I would like to turn to my favorite genre, which of course is being represented in my favorite books 2022. And that is the genre of unhinged women. I have two books that I would say fit this category. Let's start with Rachel Yoder's Nightbitch. I read this as a buddy read with my friend Anna from Vienna. This was definitely one of my favorites that I read this year. It was so weird, and even when I think about it now, I can't really describe it. Basically, this is about a mother who is rather bored and unhappy with her life, and she turns into a dog. That's it. That's the synopsis. This is about a mother who's unhappy with her life and she turns into a dog. Of course, this is about so much more. This is a book about motherhood, definitely, and how far motherhood changes you as a person. And this also deals with the frustration and the anger and the sadness that comes with being a mother and having it dominate your entire identity. This is a very strong book, I would say. All of the feelings described in this book are really strong. They are intense, whether it's, you know, a negative feeling or a positive feeling. This book is also super hilarious. It's so funny, but also it's very gruesome and dark. If you're looking for a page turner, if you're looking for something that would get you out of a reading slump, I recommend this book because it's such a roller coaster ride and it will keep you on your toes at all times. So highly recommend if you're looking for something like this. Nightbitch. The second candidate of the unhinged women category, of course, is my favorite book of the entire year, which is Animal by Lisa Taddeo. I will probably reread this soon-ish. I can't shut up about this book. It's so good. This feels like a fever dream. Animal is a book about a young woman from New York who has an affair with a man that then shoots himself in the head in front of her eyes. This event then motivates her to leave the city and drive to Los Angeles, where she moves into a little house in this kind of mountain community and meets an array of different characters. It's super atmospheric, you know, it's set in Los Angeles. The heat kind of radiates from the page, which I always love. You really feel like you're there, right there with the main character. She doesn't make the best decisions. There's a lot of stuff happening to her also. This story definitely ticks a lot of the trauma boxes, I would say. If you're not into that, maybe don't read this. There are a few scenes where I had to drop the book, or my jaw dropped completely, or I had to, I don't know, make a loud noise because I could not fathom what was going on. It's super fast. It feels like, as I said, it feels like a fever dream. It feels like a dream where, you know, dreams you usually think are, I don't know, 7 hours long, but actually it's just 3 minutes. That's what this book feels like. You can read it almost in one sitting because it's just bam, 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 bam. But at the same time, you feel like, I don't know, you lived a whole life. I don't know what else to say about this book. It's hard to describe. Read it. Just read it. It's the best book I read last year. And I know a lot of people don't like this, but it's such a great book. It's crazy, definitely. It's crazy and it's a lot. And maybe some people find it kitschy or too much or naive or I don't know, but I felt seen, which I don't know what that says about me, but hey. Unhinged Women, Lisa Taddeo, Animal. And finally, another audiobook that I listened to during Halloween, which was Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I listened to this on my walks with the dog. I was dog sitting at that time, and it was the perfect combination because I was walking through these gardens that are near our flat, and usually you don't see a lot of other people there, and I was just listening to this spooky, eerie audiobook told from the two wives' perspectives. And I don't know, it was a, you know, sometimes it's more about the time and place where you read or listened to a book rather than the book itself, and I just feel like it was the perfect match for me during that time. Our Wives Under the Sea is about two wives who are married to each other, and it takes place in the UK. One of them is a scientist and she goes on a mission in a submarine, and the submarine goes missing. This concept really worked for me because I felt like I was talking to these two women who told me their story and how they dealt with this accident and the submarine and the one wife going missing for some time and then coming back, and how they were dealing with being reunited and how far they were having difficulties during that time. Spooky, eerie, because when the submarine goes missing, it doesn't just go missing, something happens, something in the supernatural realm. So I would say it makes a perfect October Halloween-y read. I feel like this is a story that we often encounter in the context of soldiers going to war and then the wives staying behind, and in how far the traumatic events and the traumatic experiences the men are having during the war then shape and influence the marriage or the relationship, and in how far it is maybe difficult to reconnect with each other. And I think it's interesting to tell this kind of story in the context of a lesbian relationship, in the context of a different traumatic experience that is not maybe a war, but yeah, something else that happens to you and in how far everything kind of changes after that. Definitely one of my favorites this year. Also highly recommend listening to the audiobook because the two wives are being narrated by two different women. And as I've said before, it feels like you're having a conversation with these two women. It really sucked me right in. I was so engaged with the story and the two women, and yeah, highly recommend listening to Our Wives Under the Sea, which is also just a beautiful title, I feel like. Yes. Okay, that's it. These were my favorite reads in 2022. In 2023, let's hope for a better reading year. I'm not putting too much pressure on myself, but I just hope that I will read more books that I really connect with and that I really enjoy. Let's hope the entire year doesn't feel like one big reading slump, and I'm excited to see what this new year brings. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great year. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really happy. I've now been running this little channel for a year, which feels crazy, but my first video was my favorite books of 2021. Now it's my favorite books of 2022, which feels crazy that it's been a year, but I'm having so much fun with this YouTube channel and talking about books, so I'm really happy that you're here and watching. And yeah, if you want to watch more videos, make sure to subscribe. Also leave me a little comment. What was your favorite book of 2022? And then I hope to see you soon. Bye!